Moving on though, Final Fantasy 7 Remake. We've had some leaks, and I know usually we don't like to talk. Yeah, supposed leaks. Usually we don't like to talk about rumors and leaks and that type of stuff, but these were actually very very interesting rumors, supposed leaks, and they actually seem like they could be true, and I think it would really be a good framing for a Final Fantasy 7 Remake discussion because it brings up some good ideas. So we'll kind of go through these and talk about whether that we think this would be in the remake, or also whether we think this would be a good idea. And then we can also talk about, the authenticity of this, if this actually could be from Square Enix or if it's just, somebody trolling on Reddit. But it's gained a lot of attention. I've seen lots and lots of YouTube videos made specifically about this. And I think it's just because of the content that's in there. It all seems very, very reasonable.
I will say that our good friend Ian, who has
appeared last week.
Yeah, he appeared last week. He had a pretty good stance on why it's likely fake.
Mm-hmm.
So I really do take this up with a grain of salt. But I did like what I read. When I read it, it seems like this stuff can be possible. So even if it's not, rumor sheet is not true, there's a lot of bullet points on there that sound like a really good idea or something they may likely do. So it's interesting to go over it and see what could work, not work, or maybe the rumor is true. So I'm not completely supporting or denying it.
There's a couple of things on there where I saw where I was like, oh, that makes me think like this isn't true. Regardless, we're going to go through it, see what you guys think. So, and then in addition to that, we're going to tie Leon's question in at the end. So let's go ahead and get into it here. So the first big one, which is in fact probably one of the biggest ones, is the game is in fact 2 parts instead of 3, which is what a lot of people have speculated, because Katase compared it to the Lightning trilogy, meaning it's a trilogy, right? So a lot of people took probably more than they should have from that comment. But
and the fact that people think 3 discs in Final Fantasy 7 is going to be 3 discs, even though the 3rd disc was the very end of the game.
Yeah. Well, and I think what Katase was really trying to emphasize was that each game in the Final Fantasy 13 trilogy was like a 40-hour game. Because a lot of people thought Final Fantasy 7 Remake, it's going to be episodic, like a Telltale game. You pay $10 and you play 2 hours or something. And he was saying no. Each release is going to be a full game, just like the Lightning trilogy. But, that doesn't necessarily mean it's 3 games. We just didn't have anything else to go off of. So this is saying that the game is 2 parts, which I like a lot better than 3 parts, because that means they're going to stuff it with less padding, I think. But one thing they put on here is part 1 ends exactly. Well, hold on. Before I say this, y'all, we're going to have Final Fantasy 7 spoilers. If you don't want us to spoil Final Fantasy 7, I'm going to put the time codes in the description so you can go ahead and skip this topic. But we're just going to spoil Final Fantasy 7, so I apologize.
22 years, folks, and it's a big meme. So there's no way you haven't heard of it if you're into the JRPG scene.
If you go to buy this game on mobile on your phone in the Play Store for Android, one of the screenshots it gives for the game is Cloud holding Aerith in the lake or whatever while she's dead. And I'm just like, Jesus Christ.
Maybe he's teaching her how to float in water.
Yeah, he's like, just breathe, just breathe.
Oh,
relax.
She's really sinking.
Oh boy. Oh God. Okay.
But anyway, this type of, if the story did split in 2 right here, there would be a lot of content from disposal and
after. Let me say it real quick because I didn't say it. Part 1's supposed to end when Aerith dies. She drops into water and then it's supposed to fade to black, essentially. So keep going. I'm sorry.
After that, I'm trying to think to myself, could you make 2 games out of 2 sections easily? I think yes, but there's a lot of not much. I mean, obviously stuff's going to get stuff, or story's going to change in the remake and such, and probably to pay certain parts better, but there's a lot that goes on the second half of the game.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of how they can make a more climatic finish to the first part, because if it's 2 separate games, I guess that's debatable too. But would each game have a 3-act structure? Would there be a big climax at the end that ends the way it usually does? Will it get rewritten?
Yeah, and that's one thing I've kind of wondered too. Is for a full release of a JRPG, typically they have that 3 act structure, and by the time you get to the end area, there's the final boss's big dungeon, and there's all these you know crazy stuff going on, and it's just like, where in Final Fantasy VII could you break that off with the story as we know it? And as much as I hate the idea of them ending it on Aerith's death, and I can get into why here in a moment, I just think that that's probably the best place for them to do it if they wanted to do it just cleanly, because that's just what most people expect, and they'd be okay with that, I think. But from like a storytelling perspective, I'm like, man, that scene is like a motivation for like the second half of the game for Cloud, and like there's a lot of anger that fuels Cloud for the second half of the game. And like, I hate the idea of us like having this break in between one game, and then for me to play like 2 or 3 other games, or more, however long it takes, and then having the second part come out, and then like they're gonna give me like a recap, like, oh yeah, remember like how invested you were in the story like 2 years ago, like get back invested, and I'm sure like I'll just replay the game before the second part comes out. But it's not, I don't know, like I hopefully like they can like kind of spice things up a little bit and find a different place to do it, but I don't know where else. I mean, that would be perfect, going into the city of the ancients, and like that could be like the final dungeon area, and there's some sweet bosses in there and everything like that. So I don't know.
Guys, Square Enix would go out of business if they hired Gact again.
Yeah, I see some people going wild in the comments. Heon saying the remake is clearly going to be coming out in 7,777 episodes, which, if they had the balls enough to do that, I would be a fan. I don't know if I'd buy all of them, but
first episode is free. You got to pay for the rest.
Yeah, it will cost $7,777.
Yeah, I just hope for like the first game to end. Let's say that the 2-part thing is true here. Like, I want some kind of bittersweet, satisfying ending that technically is on a cliffhanger, but like you still feel satisfied at the end of it, like
Yeah, like
story-wise.
what did we resolve at the end of this game? Like, what did we accomplish?
Yeah, similar to Empire Strikes Back. Like, what happens at the end of that movie. I won't. I guess I won't spoil that, because apparently we can't spoil things that are 30, 40 years old. But, but the way that movie ends is like you feel satisfied at the end of it. Like, there's more to come. The story isn't necessarily done yet, but it gives you that bittersweet satisfaction. That's
when there's a little bit of success too. Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Like, I know after Aerith dies, you have to fight Genova again. Like, I wonder if they'll have that scene more out, or they'll just be a lot more dramatic flair when it happens.
Yeah.
But I do hope they figure out something to make that a thing.
I've seen some interesting rumors that have said that, they've acknowledged they don't have any like firsthand knowledge about this. They're just speculating that since that is one of the most expected scenes in the game, that is most likely one of the most obvious places to not change it, because it has to be in there. It's such an iconic scene that they can't have the game and not have her die, but to change the part where she dies, maybe make it later in the game or a different part in the game. I don't know if they could do that, but there is other options with that too. So, but I mean, in short though, like 2 parts for Final Fantasy VII, I could be okay with that, because I totally understand, going from Midgar to Calm in Final Fantasy VII, the original, it takes like 9 seconds, but in the remake, it can't take 9 seconds. It's got to be a little bit of a trek, because it's a different city, so you're going to have different aspects of traveling that's just going to take more time. And they're expanding Midgar, and they're having more story with some of the Avalanche crew, and kind of fleshing out their characters, and there's a lot of new cutscenes and stuff like that. So I get it. I'll be able to accept 2 games. But when it gets up to like 3 games, I almost feel like it's kind of like the Hobbit trilogy for the movies. Like, you finish the second movie and you're just like, oh, come on. Like, Did you really need to stretch this out for a third movie? Like, it's kind of ridiculous. Like, like almost like you're milking it. So, I feel very, very comfortable with 2 games though.
If they made 3 games, I'm very sure that they would dive more into things like the Nibelheim incident
Mm.
and like play it
Oh,
from
there's
Cloud's
plenty of
perspective,
content. Yeah.
but then maybe it lets you play through Zach's perspective. Like maybe at the beginning of the third game,
Yeah.
you find out like you get more details on what really happened, or maybe while Tifa's trying to snap Cloud out of it, they get like the actual events, and maybe that plays a bigger role, and you see more through. Maybe you see through it again, except you're a soldier, like you're
Mm.
supposed to be, like not like soldier, like normal enemy trooper, Cloud enemy trooper. Seeing through that perspective or something. I don't know,
Yeah.
but they have to take a game that if it's 3 games and they plan to make a full game out of it, which we can maybe put in the 25 to 30 hour range at minimum. I would imagine.
I think it's going to be leaning more towards like the 40 to 50 hour, to be honest. Cause I like,
Well, you have to turn a 40-hour game into a 100 hour.
yeah, but like I said, just like traversing from area to area, the fleshing out Midgar. Midgar is actually not going to be 12 screens. It's going to be a full city. I mean, I'm thinking like this game's, just traveling alone should take a little bit longer. But I do agree with you. At some point, you are just padding the game. I mean, let's face it, it was a 40-hour game on the PlayStation 1. So if you're making 3 games, that's just that's in my opinion too long.
If we go from Jensen's perspective, all we're going to be doing is just puking in a toilet. Just, the whole game is like press A to puke,
Yeah. I saw
press
some
triangle
people
to mega puke.
say online saying like maybe part 1 was, just Crisis Core. And I'm like, I don't think that's what they're going to do.
Yeah.
And, and especially with this newest trailer, like obviously, but even before that, I was like, I don't think they're going to do that.
Maybe it's a surprise. Maybe this is the second game they're showing us, or maybe they'll do a Star Wars thing,
Yeah.
where it's like you get episode 2, then 3, then 1.
Here's a big one that I thought was interesting.
This
Um,
one I have a hard time.
okay, it says the overworld map is almost seamless. This one I agree with you. I have a hard time believing. There are some zones. There will be roads and methods of transportation. It is open world. Vehicles like the tiny Bronco work almost exactly the same, only being able to go in lighter water. There will be items available occasionally on the field. Chocobos will, of course, be obtainable after the farm. I have problems with this, but if this was actually how it operated, I think that would be really, really cool. The fact that like they would make it so large, it just sounds really, really expensive. It sounds like it would take a lot of time to work on, and I don't know. Like again, we don't know when this game actually is coming out, but it sounds like it's coming out fairly soon.
There's
So
one primary problem with the open world, the way he explains
yeah,
it. And it's one very key thing, and that is this is made on the Unreal Engine. Someone brought it up to me earlier and explained to me how Unreal Engine works. Is Unreal is not built for those big type of open world games similar to FF15.
yeah, and that's just what I was saying. Yeah, it's just that's traditionally not what it's for. I saw they released a recent patch, and they're starting to like put different tool sets and stuff in there that'll kind of let you play with the idea of it, but it's not like it's supposed to not that's not ideally what it's for. Like it's not if you knew from the get go that's what you wanted to do, that wouldn't be your choice. Granted, Square Enix has a ton of money, but
So, I mean, if I had to speak ideally and working in the context of the Unreal Engine, the two ideal ways I'd like to see it is either do it similar to Dragon Quest 8 and 11, where
mm,
you're traveling through lands and stuff and zones, but you
yeah,
are going to a destination, and by the end of the game, you can get on the highway and travel the world and go to drop off points of the game to get to certain parts in the map that you want to, which I thought was a brilliant design in
hmm,
in the Dragon Quest game.
yeah.
And the other way would be I don't know if you ever played Nino Kuni 2.
No, I haven't.
How they do the world map is like more traditional type, like PlayStation era type world map. But the cool thing about it is when you get into battle, what it would do is it would zoom down on the map and your character would be in the battlefield. Uh, and after you fight and defeat the monsters, then the camera would zoom all the way back up and you would be traveling on the world map again, like a seamless type deal.
Yeah. I mean, if they could incorporate that, that would be really, really cool. The kind of the direction I was thinking was more like and it's similar to Dragon Quest 11 is the Final Fantasy 12 route where, it's just a series of zones, but it is generally open. It's just zoned maps, right? But they're large maps. They take a long time to traverse. They're well designed. They're interesting. They have a lot of weather effects and stuff like that, so it feels very vibrant. But it's not just like, well, here's a giant map, and you can just press the up button on your controller, and Cloud's going to run for 45 minutes. I don't, I don't know. I just don't think they're going to do that.
By the way, Tina waving her hand there, that's my fiance.
Oh, I was like, who is this person? But hi.
You think we get new people around here?
But we got a new listener. All right.
Mm.
But yeah, I mean, if it was open world and they found if with all the things that we just said aside, like all the technical difficulties and just like how powerful is my system and like all that crap, like let's say all that was not an issue, and like they just made an overworld map of Final Fantasy VII. Like I think the story itself would like really be perfect for an open world game because uh most of the game you're just searching for Sephiroth, and like that's a very, very enticing storyline for an open world game because you're just going from area to area and finding clues and kind of solving quests when you show up, and like it's not really a structure that needs to be linear and its make to work. I think it would work fine as an open world game. Obviously you'd have to be pointed in a certain direction. It can't just I think like there should be some natural barriers. I don't think you should be able to get to Cosmo Canyon before you get to Calm. Like, obviously there's oceans and rivers and stuff. So they can direct you that way. But I do think if technically if if there weren't some obstacles to overcome, I think that they could make it work and it could really be interesting.
Yeah. Um, this is probably the biggest question people have. Like, for like, how is this game set up? Like, like how is it going to work? Are we going to get a traditional world map? Like, I really wish they just come out and say, "Oh, it's doing this. We'll show you more later." But I know that they're saving stuff for like the June thing, but I guess in a way this gets people talking. So
Dude, how cool would that be though? Because you already know that they're expanding Midgar like a lot, right? So let's say it takes you 12 or 13 hours just to get through Midgar, and you spend all this time in this very linear structure of the game, just like the original, but even longer. And you think like, oh, the whole game's like this. And then finally you leave Midgar and suddenly it's like completely an open world game. And you're just like mind blown. That would be sick. That would be awesome. They won't do that, but that would be awesome.
yeah, like I said, I mean, we're excited for it, and it drew me back in after I stopped really caring about it. But I still say temper your expectations. It's still
Yeah.
Square Enix, and I'm still waiting for them to say something that will, spark a controversy. I'm sorry, spark a controversy with everyone.
They'll probably like cancel the game on its anniversary or something.
Yeah, it's like happy 20th anniversary from FF7 we canceled.
We removed Sephiroth from the game.
Which you all, yeah, that's a joke, but it could be true because they did that for the FF15 DLC. They're not
Yeah.
about doing this apparently.
Yeah. The funny thing is we're not joking. Anyways, so yeah, there was that part which was pretty interesting if they could go that route.